I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes it is so hard to trust people. And at times it is hard to trust God, especially when you're going through a difficult time. I wrote this book, You Can Trust Him, anchoring your hope in God during difficult times. And I know that, like me, many of you have faced some difficult times. As I began to write this book on trusting God, I had so many challenges. The first challenge that I had was that my shoulder became frozen. The pain was so excruciating, it took a whole year before I could pick up this book and begin to write it again. This is the 16th book that I've written, and it is the first book that I wrote that I did not know what the title was. And many times in irritation, I would go and pray and ask the Lord, what do you want the title of this book to be? And one day he just very quietly said to me, you will know the title after you have written the book and when you read it. I finished the book, I read the book, and I heard two titles. The first title was You Can Trust Him, and the other title was Unwavering Hope. And I said to the Lord, which of the title is the right one? And he said, which one do you struggle with the most? I had to laugh because I know it was trusting God. And so I want to just share with you my testimony of this journey of writing this book. So right after I started writing the book, I was at a conference ministering, and I went home to the hotel and was just in excruciating pain. And when I went to the doctor said, your shoulder's frozen. I couldn't drive for almost 2 months, and I could not pick up the book and started to write it again for almost a year. When I did pick it up and began writing, it was so difficult because I was still in so much pain. So a year later, I began to write the book. I was almost finished with the book, and I went to the doctor for my regular physical, and the doctor said, I need you to go have an ultrasound. There's something that is concerning. So we rushed to have the ultrasound, and she said, we need to have you to have emergency surgery. And so before the surgery, I was in and out of the emergency room. We were doing MRIs, we were doing ultrasounds, because we were trying to make sure that what they were seeing was not cancerous, even though they were concerned that it might be cancer. And so after going through a battery of tests, it was time for the surgery. 4 days before the surgery, I was notified that my mom had died. I was in the middle of one of our global night of prayer, laying out in the floor, talking to the Lord about this journey of trusting Him and all these health challenges that I was having, when one of the staff members came to tell me that my mom had just died. One of my sisters said, we need you to come home, we need your support. The other sister said, you need to stay and take care of your health, because my blood pressure was almost 200, over 100 and something, and so we knew I could not travel. So I went on and I had the surgery. The surgery was supposed to be 2.5 hours. It turned into 7 hours. After all those tests to determine that there was nothing else that could be wrong, when they opened me up and removed the first set of tumors, they discovered there was another tumor below it. This time they had to call MD Anderson for a specialist to come and to do the surgery, because they didn't know if it was cancerous or not. As God would have it, he did not have another surgery when they called him. So he came over, he removed the tumor, they examined it, discovered that it was benign. They were able to close me up. Can I tell you that in addition to my mom dying, it was such a challenging time. Went through a lot of pain and a lot of struggles. But I want you to know that in the middle of all of the pain and all of the struggles, God was still right there with me. Sometimes when we're facing hard things, when we have gone through hard, difficult challenges, some of you may be facing those right now. We wonder why God is silent. We wonder why he's not there. We wonder why he's allowing us to go through these hard things. I have discovered in in the midst of all of the struggles that I was facing, that God was right there. Not once did he take his eyes from me. Not once has he taken his eyes from you in the midst of what you're facing. Though he may be silent for a moment, does not mean that he's abandoned you. He did not abandon me during that season of struggles, and he has not abandoned you. So this book was written out of a time of tremendous struggles and hardship. And I will tell you that of the 16 books that are written, it's probably the most profound of them all. Of course, it would be so, because the scripture says what the enemy means for evil in our lives, God will turn it around for our good. Out of that difficult time, God is allowing me to use this testimony to impact so many hearts. I've done so many radios and TV interviews around this book, and I've had the opportunities to share my testimony of what God did during this difficult time. And so many people's lives have been impacted by this book. And I know that as you read it, not just my story, but the stories of so many men and women in the Bible that face so many difficult things, like the Hagars and the Calebs and the Jeremiahs, who came out of it victoriously. And they came out victoriously because just like me and just like you, God was with them during the difficult seasons. You'll hear me say this often, because you cannot trace God's hands in the midst of what you're facing. It doesn't mean that he's not working. He's working whether you can trace his hands or trace his movements. He is with you in the midst of your struggles. He was with me. He was with the men and women in the Bible that I wrote about, and you can trust him. And he's with you today. And he will see you through. And he'll give you a victorious outcome no matter what you're facing. You can trust him.